Hi, I'm Jay, and today we're tying a 1/8 ball bucktail jig. Stay tuned. So, good morning. Tying today, something very simple. As usual, we're just filling the boxes. I'm trying to get a jump on the ball head jigs. I happen to sell an awful lot of them this summer. And before I start tying the marabou jigs for the fall, I wanted to get a few of these out of the way, and I think I felt that slide in my voice. Let me adjust this just a little bit. Better. So, like I said, in the vise we have a 1/8 ball, and we're adding bucktail to these. You have to be a little bit cautious. We don't want to overload the hook with big gobs of hair. 1/8 is really the smallest I would put bucktail on. Now there's always exceptions, of course, I suppose, but typically this, I think it's the 32755 mustad hook, which has a fairly long shank to it. If this was a little bit shorter, I would probably use calftail instead of bucktail. But I have a few shops that the last 2 summers have really this, 1/8 ball, 1/4 ball. Those were the 2 sizes they want. It's the only shape they wanted. Couple shops here in central New York, and then 2 shops down in northeastern Pennsylvania. So they're fishing completely different areas, different bodies of water. I suppose they're very similar. If I had to guess, they're both rivers with stony bottoms, primarily smallmouth bass and walleye. But I have to say, I have sold and tied an awful lot of these the last 2 years. So, trying to get about 6 dozen each color in the inventory, pre-tied. Using a little bit different thread today. I'm not using my favorite go-to thread of a 2/0 round nylon. 3/0 round nylon would also work well with this. But this is for a shop, and they actually specifically asked for the flat 140 denier nylon. It's lightly waxed thread. I believe there are 2 different spools though. What is this one? FM plus 140D. What's FM stand for? Refresh my memory. Trying to see if I have another spool on my table. Can't think of it. And then I know this spool will be done soon, so I just have some ultra thread 140 denier. What's FM? FM plus. Oh, I don't know. It's been a long morning. I was painting eyes. I have some jigs on the rack behind us, drying. This is the time of the year that, you know, I'm casting and painting mainly. We're at the very end of July, going into August. But very pretty jig, very simple. Black fluorescent yellow with the red thread. But I've been very happy. You know, there's always been the 3 or 4 real big stores that take jigs throughout the whole season. I now have a handful of 8 to 10 stores, I guess. Maybe a few more. But they'll take one good order in the beginning of the season. If it happens to be a really, really good summer, maybe I'll get a second order. But usually don't return to them until it's time to start thinking about ice fishing. And I guess that's one thing. If tires are, if there's anybody out there that wants to start tying, maybe you tie a hell of a jig. Maybe you've sold a couple to people you know and you want to start selling to stores. It's kind of thinking about that. You kind of have to learn, trial and error, but you'll soon learn how stores act differently. You could have ideally you want every bait shop on a lake, right? But that's not always the case. So you got to understand that if you got a guy who's in town and he only sells bait, well, more than likely his end of the summer sales are probably going to be fairly slow. He won't have that regular foot traffic. So as a tyer, you kind of have to be careful. Where am I going with this? So in terms of, I guess in terms of money, right? Everything's COD, right? Cash on delivery. I do have, I have had some stores that want to pay with a credit card, and this is the 21st century, so we can doodly do that stuff on our phones. So I'm able to take credit cards, no problem. But I have had stores ask for terms. They want, 30 days to pay after you drop off an order. Now I sell wholesale. That's our thing. Since my dad started the business back in the 60s, we've always sold wholesale to bait shops. When Dad started originally, he was processing hundreds and hundreds of pounds of tails every fall. Tails and feathers, processing them, dyeing them, packaging them, and selling them to other stores and tires, as well as the jigs that he would manufacture, as well as being a rep for Mustad, as well as being a rep for Universal. So it was a hustle, constant hustle. But I still concentrate on selling wholesale to dealers, to stores. I do have some customers that call me direct. They pay retail price. If you go to the website, that's retail price, right? Because I'm not looking to undercut the stores that I sell to. But in terms of stores, you're going to learn there might be a hole in the wall, single owner, one worker kind of store. You walk in, it smells like bait and sadness, right? But it's been there for 30 years. It's the same guy. Everybody buys their bait there. That store is going to be busy all year long. Some stores you're going to walk into and talk to the owner, manager, and very good. You're going to know right away. They don't know much about fishing. They're starting the business with no money. One good example, just a couple of years ago, brand new. Guy calls me on the phone, said he's opening a bait shop up north of me, not too far away from other bait shops that I sell to, so adding him to my circuit is not a big deal. The problem being the size of his store was not much bigger than this room, and it was in a strip mall right next to a grocery store. Now that could be a good thing or a bad thing. The good part of it is you have a constant stream of foot traffic because everybody goes to the grocery store. It was only a few blocks from the lake. The bad thing, however, is I know that he's going to have an rent. He's going to have electricity. He's got an overhead. You know, you go to a bait shop where the guy has it in his house. Well, you know he's not paying rent. He's never going to turn the lights off because he lives there. That's a little bit different than actually having overhead. And right away this guy asked for 30-day terms. Very nicely, just explained to him, sorry, but no. You know, maybe after a couple of years, you know, and we have a relationship, we can talk about it. But, you know, he was new, and my profit margin is fairly small, right? Because I'm selling wholesale. I went back to that store the following week, making my rounds. Being fairly close to the lake and knowing what they wanted, or I gave them a lot of what I knew that they would sell. Walked in the store, and there was a big empty spot next to just a few of my cards. So I'm thinking, wow, they sold an awful lot. Well, they had the cards behind the counter. Oh, how come you didn't put these on the wall? Oh, we don't want these. Like, what are you talking about? Like, I know they will sell. I've been selling them in this area. The family's been selling them in this area since the 60s. I took over the business in 2003 full-time as sole owner. Before that, I was slave labor for the business. But he swore that they were all bad colors, and it's like, So initially he asked if I could just refund him. It's like, sorry, no, that's what you bought. I'll be happy to just exchange them for the 3 colors that he wanted. swap out the inventory. I was a little peeved at that. I was polite to him and whatnot, of course. You know, you got to play that game. On the ride home, I called the wife and just let her know what was happening. I had other sales that day. It really wasn't the end of the world. He didn't waste my time. His shop was on the way to another shop. But I told my wife on that phone call, I'll be surprised if he makes it through the summer. And again, I'm going back to because he's in a strip mall. And he's got expensive rent. You know, he's got rent to pay. He did last the summer. I did hear that he was open in the winter, but his hours were cut way back. And again, if you can't, if you're basically, he wasn't on the lake shore, but he was walking distance from the lake. And I know he was open this past spring, but he was closed by the middle of the summer. And I knew that was going to happen. You just get a sense. You know, you get it. You want to be helpful. You know, when he's asking me what jigs should I buy, what color should I buy, I try. I'm not interested in selling him my least popular jigs, but I do want to be honest and say, well, here's some colors that you should consider that I know sell. So you want to be nice and helpful, but at the same time, I knew from the beginning this guy was probably in over his head. And, you know, sure enough, when it comes down to it, it's a business. You can't stay open if you can't pay the rent, keep the lights on, etc. And there's some bait shops, God bless them, I've been selling to for the last 25, 30 years. And there's some differences. There's some that are old-timey, run-down, old building that smells like bait when you walk in, right? And then there's a couple that are really shiny. They have the lights on and nice floors and nice display racks. They're selling high-end stuff. So I have a mix of both customers. Did I get off on a tangent here? So these bigger stores, even though they're bigger, they'd still be COD. Just because you're big and fancy. I've been around long enough to. I'd like to see you at least survive a few seasons. You know, survive a winter where we have no ice. And then, you know, we can discuss terms. We can, you know, I'll do you bigger favors as we get to build a relationship, right? How'd we get on this topic? Oh, anybody they want to start their own business, right? You want to get into this? Be my guest. I'll talk about whatever you want. I'll tell you the truth. I don't care. You know, my neighbor right now could say he wants to start tying jigs and selling to bait shops. That would not concern me one bit. I've been around long enough to know. I've seen tires come and go. I've seen bait shops come and go. I'm still going to do this. I would do this for free. If I had nobody to sell my jigs to, this is how I enjoy spending time. So, tying jigs, tying flies, you know, that's just my thing. So, to me, it's just my time. But I thought about this recently. Earlier this summer, there was a new bait shop. happened to find it by accident. The wife likes to take drives through the country. We go to small country towns. Anywhere that has some sort of greenhouse cafe set up so we can buy house plants and our garden plants and have lunch. You know, we enjoy that, and I'll do anything I can to spend time with the wife, right? So if that's what she wants to do, I'm happy to do it. Let's go look at mulch. So, small town south of us into PA. Happened to see a bait shop at the side of the road. It was late in the. It was past the midpoint of the summer. Let's put it that way. So if it was early spring, I would stop, go in, talk to the guy, and make a point of trying to make a sale. But because it was after midsummer, I had no jigs with me. I had a couple business cards, that was it. But, you know, the wife was like, why don't you just stop? Go in and talk to the guy. Like, well, and basically, in a roundabout way, she basically said, stop being a grumpy old man and just go in and do it, right? Let's turn around. You can take 5 seconds and, you know, believe in yourself, I guess, right? So I turn around and I go. The place looks like it's an old ice cream store. It's small. It's not terribly big, but it's right on the river. I walk in. They actually have some decent stuff on the wall. A lot of hunting supplies, archery, clothing, a good selection of fishing. And the ice cream is kind of like a business in the same building, but separate. It was blocked off and just had the ice cream section. So it's somebody that put money into it. And again, just through experience, I've been in shops like this before. Basically, it's some guy, probably middle-aged, has a job that gives him a fair amount of extra play money. He's into hunting and fishing, doesn't like paying full price, so why not open a store so I can buy my toys at a lower price, and maybe make a little bit of money. Maybe it'll be my retirement, I don't know. So I in my head, I already know that's the type of business it is. That's the type of owner that I'm going to talk to. Sure enough, guy behind the counter, a little bit younger than me, but basically we're within 10 years of each other. Super nice guy, chit chat. And I explained to him, hey, we're just driving by, the wife made me turn around. I don't have any jigs with me, but I'm a tire, blah, blah, blah. Show him a bunch of pictures like, oh yeah, I like these. Flipping through the phone, we're talking about fishing. The river that goes by his shop actually starts way up here in New York State. So we have a good conversation. And I try not to, and I would recommend this to anybody starting out, right? You try not to, you take somebody's word with a grain of salt. You'll meet store owners that are all gung-ho, they love your jigs, but when it comes to actually taking money from their hands, you know, it's a different thing. So if they want you to, tie me up 100 of this, and you bust, you buy a lot of materials, you use up all your inventory and your thread and your time, and then you rush back over, you don't always sell it. They don't always buy everything that they made you think that they were interested in. So with that being said, talking to the guy, I was a little fooled. He seemed interested. So I said, listen, next weekend I'm off. I'm not working. I knew my wife was working. I think I knew I had like a free day, and it's like, God, I could take the kayak out, but you know, I got this guy who might want jigs. So I told him, you know, the following Saturday I'll load up the truck, I'll bring him jigs. The drive was, I don't know, half hour, 40 minutes from the house. Not far. I knew it was middle of summer, so I wasn't expecting to sell a whole bunch of jigs. But, you know, if I could make $100, buy myself lunch, buy my wife lunch, whatever, right? We're happy. Get to the store on a Saturday morning, 9 a.m. Saturday morning, so I didn't waste the day. I didn't get there too early, but early enough where he should still be open on a Saturday. He was closed. It was a little bit of a rainy morning. And I will bet, and before I say this, I will preface, I understand people have lives. I understand shit happens. I understand if you're the sole owner of a business and, you know, your kid gets sick or your dog needs to go to the vet, you know, you close shop and you take care of your family. I understand life. But the bait shop, it's a separate building. It wasn't like it's the guy's house. Bait shop on the river, Saturday morning, and it was closed. And I wanted to talk about this for a while, and I didn't want to bring it up when it first happened because I was actually pretty angry over it, more than I should have been, probably. Not that I was kicking and screaming, but driving home, like, just playing it out in my head, it's like, did I get fooled by this guy? Good thing I didn't give him jigs for free, right? But, and this isn't about that particular store, but just as a tire, if you want to get into this, these are the kind of things that happen that you're going to learn. You got to learn how to manage that. You know, if my time was money, if I had to pay myself, or if, you know, God forbid I was sending somebody to drop jigs off there and the place was closed and I have to pay somebody to drive, you know, an hour and a half there and back, plus gas, plus, you know, what a waste of money, right? But, so for this one particular instance, you know, that's one of those type of owners you're going to meet. They're going to have weird hours. Because it was raining a little bit, they probably figured it wasn't worth staying open to have only 1 or 2 sales the whole day. It wasn't raining hard. It was actually a really nice day if you wanted to fish that river. But how do we get back on track? So, that's one type of store I'd caution people against. It might be the only store in your area and you got to take what you can get, but that's just one of those things that happens. You don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. God forbid if that was the only store that I could sell to, and I'm kind of counting on him to help me make money, right? That would have been awful. And you can't count on your biggest store either. I've got a couple real big stores. They've been around a long time. You never know when, again, life happens. They might have to close tomorrow. I didn't see it coming, right? So you can't put all your eggs in that basket either. So you kind of spread out your business. You have some stores that are smaller, some stores that are bigger. I do see the couple yellow hairs popping out on the side here, and I'm going to get them when I wrap this. You know, if you're starting a business and you're a whiz on the computer, start yourself a website. At least diversify, right? Oh, that might be where I'm going. Just kind of going with this. So I mentioned how Dad hustled, right? He tied jigs. He processed bucktails. He processed hackle. He was a sales rep for hooks. He was a sales rep for materials, for Universal and Mustad. So to be successful, to be able to pay yourself more than just a few months in the summer, a few months in the summer, maybe a month or two in the winter, and then you have a couple months in between those times where you're making nothing, right? You kind of have to diversify, right? Do a little bit of everything. You'll quickly learn what works and what doesn't. Wow, this is kind of funny how this is happening. So here's a different example where I think diversifying is a mistake. I think it's working for them right now, but because they change so often, every 2 years, I think it's because the old thing wasn't making money, and this is what I'm talking about. So, bait shop that I'm actually taking materials to tomorrow. So sometimes it's hard to find stuff online. Sometimes the supply shops are out. Sometimes it's just easier to call me knowing that I'm in town and they can come over to the house and buy a couple tails off me. You know, there's a few tires locally. So this is a place that is one of those little tiny single owner, no employee kind of bait shops. Heck of a tire. The owner of this bait shop ties a very pretty jig. I know they have jigs on the wall for sale. They used to have my jigs on the wall for sale, but I've known them for a long, long time. A few years ago, they were tying a specific type of jig that they still might have some on the wall, but I don't believe they're tying these anymore. Their new hot thing is like an inline spinner, similar to a Mepps or the rooster tail, right? And that's what they're tying. I suspect, I don't know for sure, let's preface that, I'm not the expert. God forbid I'm the one that judges, right? But I do. If I could ask them without offending them, and if they would answer me honestly, I would bet that they are tying those lures because somebody, either a customer that's a better than average customer or a family member uses them and talk them into tying them. They're able to tie them and do a decent job. They're able to sell them at their bait shop. But, let's be honest. A bait shop sells a big selection of things. That one specific thing, I would not bet that they're selling enough to make back the money that they spend on the materials to start with. So for that particular lure, you buy a wire bender. Even if you get a used one somewhere and you get a good deal on it, you're still going to pay $100. If you buy it new from one of the, Hagen's or Barlow's or Netcraft, one of those places, you're going to spend a couple $100 on a wire bender. You're going to spend a couple $100 on bulk bags of the spinner blades. You're going to need a couple different sizes, a couple different shapes. Maybe you get guys asking for specific colors. They don't just want gold and silver, but maybe some fluorescent painted blades. You gotta buy treble hooks by the thousand, right? So it gets expensive. You just for one type of lure, if I wanted to make rooster tails, how many am I going to make? I'm gonna make 2 or 3 sizes. I'm going to make, just to start, 6 different colors, let's say. 6 different tails, 6 different blades, let's say, right? So you do have to have enough inventory and materials to start making those. Let's take a look at it. We haven't looked at a jig in a while. How does that look? Oh, this here looks a little... There we go. How does that look? Very pretty little jig. So I don't know if they're making, I don't know if they're selling as much as you need to cover your initial expense for all that material. So if you were a new tire and that's how you're starting, if you're lucky and you have your own little bait shop, you can kind of sell those. But if you really want to recoup what you spend, your initial outlay, and start making profit, you've got to have a circuit, sell to other bait shops, find somebody else who's buying your stuff other than just the people that come into the store. Kind of got a little sidetracked there. I'm not sure. How does that really relate? You do want to diversify. You're not going to get rich making just the one product. It's a hard business, for sure. You're at the mercy of Mother Nature. Let's keep tying. You're at the mercy of Mother Nature. You're at the mercy of the hottest new thing, the hottest new trend. Does that make sense? I'm not sure. Did I make a lot of nonsense? Maybe. I think it's all good points. I'm not like we've said before. This is all unscripted. I'm just kind of babbling away. It is kind of a sore spot, I think. I guess if I'm being honest. Over the years, it's just one of those things where it's disappointing, I guess, because as a creator, not just as a businessman, because if I was a businessman, I would not be doing this business, that's for sure, right? You're in business, the purpose is to make money. I've had good times, I've had bad times with jigs, right? We have good seasons and bad seasons. but as a creator, right? Not quite an artist, but I do think I'm a craftsman, right? It brings me joy when I know that something that I created is enjoyed by somebody else, is appreciated by somebody else. If they like it and then sell it to other people, that's even better, right? That's 2 hearts that I've won, right? So even after 20 plus years, longer than that, if you know, I took over the business full time in 2003. So it's just been me. Before that, I was, Dad's helper. I joke about it, but it was bordering slave labor, trust me. It's been a family business since I could remember. And that's just one of those things that I think it even kind of set Dad off a little bit. Because you do have an anticipation, not of success, but you have an anticipation of being able to provide something for somebody. And it's disappointing if the plan falls through, the store, doesn't survive. It's always sad to see stores come and go. You do want everybody to be successful. You know that it's a dreadful business. Not because it's not a dog eat dog world. I don't believe that. I believe it's not me against other tires. It's not bait shop against bait shop. I honestly believe it's more us against Mother Nature. Mother Nature really is the biggest obstacle in this type of business. I could sit and tie ice jigs and think I'm going to be the best ice jig tire and sell all my ice jigs, but you have one crappy winter where we just don't get ice on the bigger lakes. You're not going to sell another, you'll go a whole year without selling anything that you've created. That's terrible. It's a terrible feeling. It's a terrible way to think you're gonna have a successful business. Oh my goodness. I think I got a little bit off track. I'm not sure if I make 100% sense. Maybe I'm still a little bitter over that one store. Maybe I'm just bitter about stores in general. I don't know. But I can't lie. I do have store owners that I now consider friends that I've known for years. My kids have grown up with their kids. When I first started, when the kids were old enough to help me put stuff in bags, I'd take them on the drive with me and buy them lunch. And once they got older and knew the value of money, here's $20 for the day or $40 for the day. Thanks for helping your old man, right? So there are bait shops that our families have kind of grown up together, so to speak. Shop owners that I do consider friends, people that I trust, and where you do have some really good experiences. I think that's going to do it for us today. I do think my tangent kind of went a little odd today. I hope there's some sense to be made of it somewhere in there. I'll probably touch on it again. I'm happy to talk about anything about my experiences with the industry, whether you're new to jig tying, whether you know, if you want to do this for money, or if you just like to hear the stories. Go ahead and put questions, comments down below. You don't hurt my feelings, trust me. Yeah, I'll be open and honest. I'm not gonna keep secrets from people. But I think that's gonna do it for us today, guys. As always, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss any new content. Feel free to share any of our videos, as it does help increase awareness for the channel. Check out the website. Go buy some jigs at full retail price at jworthanti.com. I try to put new things up there as much as I can. Although I don't think there's anything new recently, like super fancy, but a couple books on there that I think people will find interesting. But I think that'll do it for us today. So until next time, guys, keep tying in tight lines. I've never noticed the screen say program and preview. I hope that doesn't show up on the video out. Sit, Ubu, sit. Good dog.